Who went first?
I don't know. We'll just start over.
All right.
Hey, World Civilizations.
Hey, guys.
We're back. Part 2.
I drew the last one, so I think you should ask me.
Okay. Yeah, let's do it. So we're going to start Absolutism, and then we'll hit up the Scientific Revolution, and then we'll be done after that. So here's the first question for Part 2. Basically, same game. By now, you know the rules, even though we're still trying to figure them out. What factors led to the rise of absolutism in Europe?
All right, so there are a couple different factors that are important here. One is that this rise in trade that we were talking about in the last video, having to do with the Atlantic system and also trade with Asia, leads to kings getting much richer because they can get a lot of this wealth that happens because of world trade. And then they can use this wealth to centralize their power and to build big palaces and stuff like that. Another thing that leads to absolutism is there's this state of constant warfare in Europe during the 1600s. This is the time period where the 30 Years' War is going on, but also a lot of other conflicts. And so basically, countries need to have big standing armies in order to survive. And to have a big standing army, you need to have a big government, which can charge taxes and organize stuff. So by having all the power concentrated in the hands of the king, it's easier to have a big, powerful army. This is all related to the need to tax, because you can't have an army unless you have money, and you can't have money unless you're taxing your citizens. So growing power of the government leads to growing power of the army. And one last thing is there is a shift in how governments are structured towards bureaucracy. And this is where the king pays government employees to run the country.
You done?
That's sweet. Yeah, I'm done, but you can take another second on that. That's
okay.
Awesome.
This is an absolute monarch holding a scepter in one hand and a small globe in the other. So if you've seen Frozen, you know that that's like a symbol of absolute power.
I didn't know that.
Conceal, don't feel then. All right. So, so you asked me next.
Yes. So what is a bureaucrat, and how does it relate? How does he relate to absolutism?
You gotta get drawn quickly. I'm gonna answer this really fast.
All right.
So a bureaucrat is someone who works for the government and is directly loyal to the king. In centralization, absolute monarchs would kind of install a government that was loyal to them and involved a lot of bureaucrats in order to run day-to-day operations and not have to rely on the nobles. So, for example, collecting taxes was done by this bureaucracy that would count people and make sure that you paid what you owed, but they were all answerable to the king.
There's the king up top, and he's angrily directing his little army of bureaucrats down there who are worried that maybe they haven't made the king happy and they'll lose their job.
Maybe.
All right, next.
What role did European nobles play in the rise, or the not rise, of absolutism in different states, different countries?
All right, so one of the main problems that absolutist monarchs faced was that the nobles, who had been really important during the Middle Ages, didn't want to give up all their power. So you had to do something as an absolute monarch to take care of the nobles. And there are a couple different outcomes that we see here. Either you can get rid of the nobles, make them not powerful, get the nobles on your side, or you can fail and the nobles will keep you from becoming absolute. So we see the first instance in France, where Louis XIV basically gets rid of all the power of the nobles. He demolishes their castles and makes them hang out in Versailles all day. And this allows him to run the government himself. On the other hand, Prussia wins the nobles over by giving them sweet jobs in the army and in the government. And so basically they no longer oppose the absolutist tendencies of the Prussian kings. And finally, England fails because James I and Charles I and basically all the Stuarts challenge Parliament for absolute control, but they end up losing a couple wars, and one of them gets their head chopped off, and so the nobles retain power, and the Stuarts do not emerge as absolutist monarchs.
Okay, very good. I've drawn castles being knocked down by King Louis XIV under direction of Cardinal Richelieu.
13th, I think.
13th. Louis XIII, under direction of Cardinal Richelieu. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I drew.
Because if you don't have castles, then you can't fight back against the king.
Yeah. Excellent. Muy bien. Shoot.
France? Oh yeah, what is the purpose of Versailles?
Well, Versailles was this gorgeous little, summer house / huge freaking estate palace thing outside the city of Paris that is built to keep an eye basically on the nobles. So Versailles' goal mainly is to domesticate the nobles of France, and for the king to keep his eye on all the nobles. So they would have to live at Versailles, and he would kind of make sure that they weren't doing anything that would hurt his own power. So kind of designed to keep an eye on his court, and therefore run the country without interruption from these meddling nobles. And by kind of keeping them there and domesticating them, he can make sure they were doing his will.
So here's Louis XIV, the Sun King, having his hands kissed by the little nobles who have lost all their power and now basically just have to suck up to Louis in Versailles all day.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
What factors lead to Spain's decline?
There are a couple things that Spain doesn't do so well. It seems for a while like they're going to emerge as the major power in Europe, but a couple things go against them. One is they're importing huge quantities of silver into Spain, but they're not actually making a whole lot more stuff. So there's lots and lots of silver, but not really that much stuff to go around. So all the stuff starts to cost more, and silver begins to lose its value. This is called inflation, and this is not good for the Spanish economy. On top of that, Spain, with all this money coming in, gets a little cocky and starts to fight some religious wars that it can't really win. It gets stuck in the 30 Years' War and loses. It tries to invade England because they're Protestant and loses. And then it also makes the Netherlands really angry, and then has to deal with a revolt in the Netherlands and eventually loses that territory. This is all these wars that they lose are because of religious reasons. And then also they're intolerant and they kick out a lot of useful citizens just because they're Jewish or Muslim. And so all of these make Spain weaker and allow France to rise up as the major power in Europe.
All right, I've drawn Spain. This is a weak sauce. Spain making war with everyone else in Europe, and then also a silver coin known as the Cruzado, which is a coin. That's a little extra bonus information. A coin that was minted by the Spanish, oftentimes in silver, because they had a lot of it. Okay. I may be getting that confused.
I don't know.
Whatever. You don't have to know that, kids. I'll put a note on this video if I need to correct it. It seems to be a theme lately. All right. So I'm going to ask you I'm going to ask you some rapid fire questions here.
Okay.
Or no, is it my turn? No.
I don't know. You just drew, so I should be
drawing. Oh, yeah, you should ask me questions.
Oh, yeah, that's my fault. I'm already drawing for it. So, what country did Eastern rulers tend to imitate?
France! Ask me another.
All right. Why did Russia westernize so rapidly around 1700?
Because Peter the Great wanted to. He just loved Western Europe and decided to build a capital city and name it after himself to make them more Western. Next.
All right. I don't have a picture yet, so you get to go again. What do Austria and Prussia have in common?
Oh, what do Austria and Prussia have in common? Well, they both come out of this chaos of the Holy Roman Empire. And these states basically centralize under absolutist monarchs. And so in Eastern Europe, we see kind of Austria, Prussia, and Russia become great absolutist countries. As we'll see in the future, they will kind of team up with England to make sure that other countries don't get rid of their monarchs, like France. But that's not yet. It's coming up soon.
Yep.
I get 2 chapters. Mm-hmm. Just know they came out of the Holy Roman Empire and they're absolutist.
So here's the smoking ruin of the Holy Roman Empire. It's been more or less totally destroyed by the 30 Years' War, and there's a sad face to show how you might feel if you lived there. And there is Prussia and Austria growing out of the northern and southern ends of the Holy Roman Empire and emerging as powerful states.
It's a stretch.
Next. Oh, wait, no. It's my turn to ask. Okay,
That's my turn to ask. I just answered.
Oh, okay, fine. Go ahead.
All right. So on to England. We got a long way to go here.
All right, let's go
We might
faster.
just skip scientific revolution.
You want to just skip the scientific revolution?
Yeah, they just studied that. That'll be all right.
All right.
So why did Parliament overthrow the House of Stuart?
Well, so there are two reasons. One is this conflict of power between the Parliament and the king. The king wants to become an absolute ruler because he wants to be just like Louis XIV down in France. And second, there's this conflict between religions. So the Stuarts have Catholic sympathies, and some of them might even want to convert to Catholicism. But England has established itself as a Protestant nation. And so it would be kind of weird for England to have a Catholic king if they're a Protestant country. So anyway, both of those lead to conflict, and when Charles I tries to become an absolutist monarch and starts leaning too far towards Catholicism, Parliament fights a war with him and eventually cuts his head off. The next time a Stuart wants to become Catholic, Parliament instead politely asks him to leave and remind them of what happened to his dad.
You done?
I can keep going and tell you what the Glorious Revolution is.
Yeah, tell me about that.
So the Glorious Revolution is this time when the Parliament asks James II to please step down from the throne if he wants to be Catholic. James II, looking back and thinking about how his dad, Charles I, got his head chopped off, decides that this is probably a smart move, and so he retires to France without fighting or anything and lives out the rest of his days there as a Catholic. And now that Parliament has kicked out this king, they invite another king to come over, a solid Protestant by the name of George, or is it William? No, it's William.
William of Orange.
William of Orange. And his wife, Mary, who is related to one of the previous rulers in England. So these guys come over and are Protestants, so that settles the religious issue, and they also agree that Parliament is supreme. And so this settles the power struggle between the nobles and the kings by basically saying that Parliament is supreme and the king's power is limited and not absolute.
All right. I took a long time to draw this. This is the head. No, this is the head of Charles I, and this is the body of Charles I, because his head was chopped off.
Yes. By that guy?
That happened. Yeah, this is a strong guy, strong dad, here with an axe in his hand. Because the guillotine was a French thing, and it's much later.
Yeah.
Like
So
200 years
anyway,
later.
I guess we're done now, except for the scientific revolution. So you want to just call it?
Yeah, I mean,
They're probably bored of listening to us at this point. Do you think?
yeah, I think just if you go back and rewatch your scientific revolution stuff, that'll be pretty self-explanatory.
Mm-hmm.
I think. So thanks for watching. Should we draw one last picture?
Okay. Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. Just bear with us.
Yeah, I know you can't wait to see this. You can turn it off now if you don't care.
What? The end.
That's how you might feel after watching this whole video.
Probably. Bye, guys.